You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Joza Nada, a creative strategist and founding partner at Wise Owl, a consultancy firm that specializes in communication for social change. I'm also a co-host of the podcast Give A Hoot, the first ever crowd-funded podcast for communication in the Philippines. In this segment with Teka Teka News, we give our insights on the communications industry and some insights from our work with civil society organizations. This is a segment about us, but not about us. And today, we'll share lessons on creative collaborations. That was a song from the campaign Kapwa Ko, Love Ko, a human rights campaign that encourages us to care for each other the way we want to be cared for. Sinasabi nito na when we nurture, protect, and defend one another, we can all thrive. Siguro iniisip nyo, wow guys, kaya tayo may consultancy firms. Or creatives lang makakagawa niyan. Well, thank you. But also, ang totoong kwento dyan ay we don't have full ownership of that campaign. This was a collaborative effort of insights from our audience, strategists, creatives, songwriters, human rights advocates, and musicians. Feel good siya. But if you listen to it, there are lines that say, mapagtanggol at matulungan ng mga pinuno, malayang hahayag ng may talino at puso. And it talks about freedom of expression and asking accountability from government leaders.
Mapagtanggol at matulungan ng mga pinuno, malayang hahayag ng may talino at puso.
Bago ko sumali sa Wise Owl, I worked for several advertising agencies as an art-based creative, and this was our process. I would come up with the campaigns on my own or with fellow creatives, and then clear it to my bosses, the accounts team, the strategy team, other bosses, and then finally the client. It was a good experience and it gave me a strong foundation and a clear creative process from ideation to execution. But it was so easy to rely on our own assumptions or maybe even our biases, when the people we're making this for don't have a say during the creative process. I was taught in advertising that you have to make your clients think that it was their idea or that you were inspired by their idea, so it's easier to get approved. But they're not the audience. I remember a campaign with Rare Philippines. The goal was to talk about marine conservation issues to fisher folk. But Rare's Fish Forever program taught me that talking about marine conservation issues alone will not resonate with fishers. It's a human issue. How can we ask them to take care of their environment when they think their source of livelihood is being taken away from them? And so we would gather different representatives of communities they work with to brainstorm and come up with branded campaigns and other communication materials that answer their different challenges.
Ang susi sa pagdisenyo ng isang successful community engagement campaign ay nagsisimula sa klaro at malinaw na kaalaman tungkol sa konteksto ng problema na gusto nating i-address. Ang pag-understand ng klaro kung sino ang mga tao sa likod ng problemang ito at ang kanilang mga behaviors. Importante din na alamin kung ano ang mga motivation at barriers para mag-change ang isang behavior.
That was Fel Cadiz, Director for Behavior Adoption and Training in Rare Philippines. We heard him in the podcast Sa Fish, My Forever, also produced by Puma Podcast. I remember being asked this question at a job interview before. What work was I most proud of? The answer wasn't in the portfolio I presented. To be honest, at that point, the work I'm most proud of was holding creative sessions with Rare Philippines. What struck me the most in these collaborations was how little I knew about the nuances in certain issues. Alam kong I know how to make it look good and sound nice from a creative point of view. So my first takeaway as a creative is this. No one individual or group has a monopoly on creativity. But for this to work, creatives have to remind themselves that collaborating with a diverse group of individuals is rooted in the belief that great big ideas can come from anyone. Creative collaborations with non-creatives, with experts in their field, with representatives of their communities, with advocates, with young people, with older people, with friends, or even with enemies is a valuable lesson in humility. For example, we worked with the Commission on Human Rights, and we came up with a mental health campaign idea for Cordilleran youth. It's so easy to think, too, that we live in a modern world now. Families are more open to issues like mental health among the Filipino youth. But when I was brainstorming with somebody who works with the Cordilleran youth, I learned that that's not necessarily true in their community, especially among the elders. Some adults, well, a lot of adults, still use words like nagiinarte lang or it's just a phase. Narealize ko na ang daling mag-develop ng biases based on my own experiences or even my social media feed. And so we ended up using Usap Tayo, a campaign that encourages the youth and their elders to talk, listen, and learn about mental health together, so that we can support young people to achieve their aspirations in life. I realized that listening to people outside our circle produces campaigns that are more strategic and resonant to the people we're talking to. No echo chambers, especially if it's a campaign that addresses social or political issues. So, ang haba-haba ng sinasabi ko, but this is really all I wanted to say about creatives, which could be about you, but also not about you. Sometimes we treat our ideas like they're the source of our pride and joy, na parang ang galing-galing natin. But in reality, sometimes, our ideas don't work. Minsan, it's the people we are trying to reach with our message. Sila pa yung makaka-come up with a better idea if only we really listen to them. Again, I'm Joza Nada from Voice Owl. This episode was written by myself with substantial points from Oya Ariola and Mika Ortega. This episode was produced by Kat Ventura. For more stories on hope-based communication, I invite you to listen to our podcast, Give a Hoot. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening.